I'd like to thank our sponsors, Blood Moon Box, a monthly subscription box service for period pads and tampons to help support all humans who have a cycle for that time of the month, and no need to run to a store to mix and match period supplies that don't cater to the entire ebbs and flows of your cycle. There are 2 box options based on your cycle, light and medium, and then heavy. And in addition to the period products, you'll also receive PMS herbal teas, a candle, and some other items for your time of the month. You can reserve a box by navigating to bloodmoonbox.com. And bloodmoonbox.com is on a mission to destigmatize the idea of period blood. At Blood Moon Box, they believe that it is the time to honor the enchanting magic within every person who has a cycle. So join us in embracing the magic of your cycle with Blood Moon Box. Hi, my name is Yasmin Tarehi, and this is Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, consciousness, and spirituality. Today's episode is with Sid McNairy, the architect of this art of peaceful living. He is a spiritualist and a teacher who helps people connect with their highest and best selves through disciplines such as meditation, yoga, and self-discovery. And with a background in coaching college football and coaching NFL players, Sid's journey through life has involved battles both physically and mentally. And I am so excited to introduce him to the show. He's highly recommended by a former guest and dear friend, Paul Terrell. And I've just gone down the rabbit hole and very excited to learn more from him. So welcome to the show, Sid.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So Sid, to kick it off, you're a leadership coach and consultant. What are kind of the big themes emerging today in terms of the challenges that you're seeing people face?
I think the common challenges that I'm seeing when I go out and speak and work with different teams and companies and things is people with, since the pandemic, a big one has been the ability to reconnect. I think that's a big, big deal for most people. And as well as with so much that we're doing, we've got lots of podcasts, and this is one of the most amazing ones. We've got people talking over Zoom, and half the time some people aren't on camera, other people are on camera. So the fear of speaking is a big one as well. And then just being in the flow of life. So many people are caught in this space of, okay, what does it look like going forward? Because everything has shifted.
Yeah. Well, so I'm curious, when you say fear of speaking, public speaking, how do you help people navigate that type of challenge?
Well, I think one, I challenge people often to different ways to say, okay, let's figure out where we can get you speaking often, because fear is just the unknown. Most people fear things they don't know. So as soon as they get comfortable in that, and I think that's what's happened for me that makes it easier, is I've been put to that challenge since I was 7 years old, to have to step into speaking. So speaking seems so ordinary to me. And it's awesome to be able to have all of those tools that I've been coached through, especially, as a college football coach and an athlete all the years before that. And it's easier for me to just navigate those things. And I think that's what it is more than anything. When people have an opportunity to start to speak more often, it just becomes natural, even though that's something we do all the time. Like you and I are having this conversation. I'll be talking to my wife later. You'll be talking to the people in your life, and everybody listening is talking to someone. Yet somehow we fear it when it's like, oh, now everybody's watching.
Yeah, that's so true. It's so interesting. You said you started speaking when you were 7 years old. And what does that mean? Was it in terms of a church, or just what do you mean by that?
Yeah, when I was 7, we first moved from Baton Rouge, Louisiana to Washington, D.C. And I thought I would be playing soccer for my dad, and I was seen on the soccer field. So I never got to play for my dad, even though he coached the other kids. And so I was taken to a team, and they groomed us to be, to go over and play in England, to play in all these different countries. And so that's what it was. It's like, okay, stand up in front of the team and now tell us about you. Because it was important for us to be able to know that when we became 15, that was already a plan for us to be overseas playing. And so much that it was like at 14, they put myself and my friend at the time, put us on a train and said, okay, you're going to travel from Washington, D.C. to Rhode Island without your parents on the train, and you got to figure it out. So I was groomed to be here now. And not everybody has that. So I can pull from those tools that I've learned, and I help people in that way. So really sitting down and saying, okay, here's what we call the ALT factor, advanced leadership techniques and trainings. And I even get called into businesses to help them figure out, okay, can their higher ups begin to speak to their employees in a way that serves everybody's highest good.
That's awesome. But so, I'm curious, you said also that one thing, that a challenge that you see often is this disconnection, this kind of lack of connection to self. And I'm curious, how do you coach people through that reconnection to self? Because that is kind of oftentimes a symptom of inability to speak or feel confident speaking as well.
Yeah, I think one thing that we really emphasize is the idea of listening. And a lot of times people, I mean, you can watch people, most people that are listening are going to see it now with people that they're talking to. They may have their phone on the table wherever they're talking, which means you're not the most important person in the room. They're waiting for someone else to show up on the phone that becomes the important person to talk to, you know, or they are in a space of, they don't even know that they're not listening. Most people are actually thinking when they're hearing someone else speak, thinking about, do I trust what they're saying? Is there a lack of trust? Do I agree or disagree? And all the different things that go on in our mind. And all of a sudden now it's like, okay, are you listening to yourself? Listen. I had to learn that when it came to listening to someone else. I had to first know, where was I listening from? And so that's a big thing that whenever we go and work with people, we start there. Okay, let's look at where you're listening from. When did it start? Because a lot of times people are listening to other people, and they're actually listening based on a traumatic experience that they had as a child. And then that plays into it. And then they have another traumatic experience when they get in their teenage years or so. And then another one when they're breaking away from their family. And all those things echo in someone's mind until they know that that's where it's coming from. And so we really taking that time to say, okay, where are you listening from? And now how can you generously listen to someone else without the need to try to fix them or change anything, or just listen? And if there's something that needs to be added, it'll still be there when that person's done speaking. It's almost like I've even heard it already early on in this conversation we're having, because I hear the space in your listening. And that's so refreshing to me, to know that it's okay for there to be a little bit of pause because you're just listening and see what comes next.
I love that. And, I love that you've observed that because, I often feel like conversation doesn't have that space, and that we're constantly in this, almost like this tennis match that just constantly the ball is going back and forth, back and forth. And I think there's really actually a lot of power in the pause. And, you bring up such a powerful point about the art of listening, which is, I think, a lost art now. How do you train people to start to listen more deeply? Do you do kind of small challenges that eventually lead to larger challenges? But I'm curious, if you can give us an example of someone you've coached over the years who just really needed help with listening.
Well, for me, I'll start there with meditation. I mean, I started meditating when I was 8. It's still on that same path of sports. And so when our coach taught us to meditate, it wasn't, we were never told stop thinking, because that is another thought, but to just observe where my mind was going. And I did literally, I mean, I have been teaching meditation for a long time now, and that's part of it. Just beginning to see, okay, how can I sit in the gap between my thoughts so that things open up? So I'd really work at that with people on getting into their own meditative practice so they can observe themselves, because I think that's the number one place to start when it comes to listening, is just observing. And then we have other ways that we will, okay, what did you say? Now say it again. Can you say the same words that you just said, because you're hearing yourself in those thoughts? Because I think that's an important part of it, is knowing that our thoughts are creating our reality. And now I have to be able to observe myself. And if you've noticed, anyone listening is hearing me keep going back to the self, myself, more so than I will ever talk about what's going on outside of me, because everything's happening on the inside first, and then we move from there.
Okay, I love where this is going because I've spent a lot of time really trying to understand and grok this concept of our inner world creating our outer world, and you definitely seem like someone who has absolutely mastered your inner world. There's just, even just in terms of the way you speak, I could tell that there's a lot of groundedness and rootedness and intentionality in it. So I'm also curious, you said you started meditating when you were 8, but at what point did you start to really see the connection between your thoughts and your external world really play out in kind of a big way?
You know what's funny, and I'm far from someone that goes to church every Sunday. Even maybe once a year is really a stretch for me. And yet there's in John 1:1, I have a friend that's memorized so much of the Bible. And so we always go back and forth on, well, what do you think about this? And in John 1:1, this is the first thing John says. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. So there it is. I mean, in the beginning was a thought, was the Word. And when I look around into the world, I constantly try to catch something that I didn't think about. It's impossible. If I walk outside and I'm, before I even think about, I'm going to go look at my car, I thought about my car. Before I think about what am I going to watch on TV? What am I going to say next? There's always a thought that leads it. So when I'm looking at myself and figuring out, okay, what's this outer world expression? Where is it coming from? It's coming from the thought. And so even when I have experienced major things in my life, from health to marriages, all of it comes from a thought. And that's the beginning, is just recognizing that. So just being told that, even though I've been told several times over, and many people probably have heard it, John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word. And so if the beginning was the Word, who was talking, and what were they saying to themselves? And then it became everything else. So that's how it shows up for me. I'd love for someone to be able to call me. You can get my number from Yasmin if you have this moment in your life that you actually know that something was not thought of. Even the idea, because someone once challenged me on this. They said, okay, so a baby doesn't think about it, but you already thought about the baby before the baby ever even existed. So maybe the baby wasn't thinking about it, but I was conceived and thought of from my parents before I was even thinking. At least so we think.
I love that challenge. Good luck, whoever wants to call and share that example. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I've been very aware of almost like this thought gym that we're in, just this, and now more than ever, I feel like with social media and all the kind of competing things colonizing our minds, we have to be very careful about where our thoughts, what our thoughts are and where we're directing our energy. So could not agree with you more. Sid, I'm very curious. You were an athlete growing up. You've worked with NFL players. How was being an athlete like a conditioning for leadership?
I actually think someone was asking me yesterday. I was talking to a mom, and she was curious what it would be like if she were raising her kids now. And I said, well, the thing that I see is a lot of people now, you can see like they're paying athletes in high school. Like LeBron James' son in high school was making 7.2 million for name, image, and likeness. And so, which is astronomical, right? Like, okay, some people will not make that in their whole lifetime. And so, but yet he's made it in 1 year of high school. And so I think that when I look at athletics, and I had a 40-person staff, and I think 10 of them were all Americans. What I loved about hiring all Americans is they already had a concept of team and how to move together, and that even if one person shines, that doesn't take away from the other person. And so that part of it for me, as I was talking to this mom, I was like, if I get to, and likely I won't, other than maybe grandchildren, if I get to raise children again, raise a child, I would take the time more than ever to say, okay, who's going to be the coach? Because of the impact of that person speaking into the child's mind at such a formative age. Like my parents, that's the thing I think my parents did the biggest blessing for me, was that they chose to make sure that whoever I was going to play for was going to program me in a way that would make things my highest. I mean, my high school football coach, for the 12 years I coached college football, every year we would meet for breakfast at the AFCA coaches convention with 15,000 people. He would make sure that we had breakfast every day so he could ask me about my life and make sure that he mentored me into being the best person I could be. I was always his guy. And that I will forever be grateful for all the coaches I've had. Coach Harville, especially in that time of me transitioning from being a college athlete to being on my own as a college coach and making proper choices that would keep me moving forward.
So, I'm also curious, like you talked about like uh, managing a big team, and I'm curious, like in terms of the interpersonal dynamics, cross-cultural clashes, and what it takes to foster a sense of belonging. Because I know that you do a lot of work with belonging. Can you tell us, how do you create systems of safety within organizations?
Well, when it comes to systems of safety, I think first and foremost, there has to be a culture of feeling safe to communicate. And I was thinking about this a couple days ago as I have to go give a talk at a place. And I was like, okay, when I walk in, what if they don't already have that in place? What do I do to create that? And one is for me, which is tricky now because I wanted to make sure that, okay, they're going to be able to write anonymously what took place. And at first I was like, well, they could go up to a computer and type, but then the computer could possibly see who's typing. So no, that's out. So then I was like, okay, we got to get back to the old school. I'll have note cards that they can write on the note and put it in. And then we've got a pile of the things that worked, the things that didn't work, and what we can do in the future. And I'll open them and look at them. And then they get to see me burn them at the end. Like, nope, this is going up. Nobody gets this. Like that. So now we feel safe to communicate, to look at the things that weren't working. And now we at least somebody, I know I feel better when I get to voice what's bothering me. So at least I got that, no matter who it is. That doesn't mean that everybody's going to do everything that everybody says they want different. But as soon as you have a voice in it, I think that begins to create this space of, oh, somebody's listening, somebody cares, and now we can move forward. So that's the first thing I do with any company struggling. That's like, okay, how do we move this needle forward? And that's begin to make sure that everybody feels great about being there. There was a conversation I was having with someone, and they talked about, you want to know how important everybody is? Ask the janitor to take 24 hours off. And that person cleaning up the bathroom doesn't clean for 24 hours. Everybody remembers that person. And that to me is a big deal, to make sure that, okay, everybody is important. Not everybody's doing the same job, and some jobs have to be done in order. But that's what I learned in coaching, especially being around Bill Belichick. The big thing I learned was everybody must do their job to win. And when everybody wins, when we win as a team, everybody wins, everybody elevates, everybody steps into their next job, their next place on the team, or however you look at that when it comes to business. But those things are so important that often aren't taught on a daily basis to people unless they are in teams. So that's why I keep going back to that.
This concept of working together is really powerful, right? Because I also agree. I think that we live in like this win-win universe, and we've sort of been brought up to believe that we live in this zero-sum game one. How do you deal with people, I mean, especially in the world of athletics, right? How do you deal with people who have like really big egos? Because that oftentimes what I've seen prevents the ability to kind of allow people to feel safe and almost work together.
Well, I think first and foremost is recognizing that anything that was created for good, like anything. And I don't want to go into that. That's a deep rabbit hole. Yet when we look at that, it's like, okay, the ego even was created for good. Like my ego is the reason why I sit and can give myself titles, or I can walk in a room and tell someone, I can help you manage that ailment that the doctor just gave you. Like that takes some confidence. And so in many ways, that's my ego flexing. And then I have to be able to say, okay, too much of anything is just too much. I don't care what it is. Too much of being humble, you become weak. Too much of being confident, you become arrogant. So now how can I be in the balance of those things? And so I really take the time. I think when I look at athletes that I've worked with, especially the ones I'm working with now, because I'm not coaching, I'm just working with them to move their mind into a way that says, okay, I'm going to be the best I can be, because they're being judged in high school now, and even before that. So now it's okay for someone to have confidence, yet too much becomes that. It's okay to be humble, but too much humility, take too much humility on the football field, you just got knocked out. So with that being said, you've got to learn that everything is good. Now, how can we be appropriate? How can I be appropriate when I'm sitting with my wife and, okay, I can be gentle. I don't need to be the coach all the time. And at the same time, I don't need to be the gentle person all the time. Too much is just too much. So I love talking that through with people and helping them see when and where to be appropriate with everything, because they are everything at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love the idea that balance is really what we want to strive for, not just one polarity or the other. And and you make a good point, like that the ego does serve its purpose. And, certainly with people who are overly humble, they sort of lose out all if they over-index on their humility. So I'd like to talk about your work with unconscious biases and diversity in the workforce. I mean, what are you sort of seeing in culture today when you're looking at different corporations and how leadership teams are structured? And what do you think is missing, or what do you think is actually moving forward?
Well, first, I'd say I love the idea of diversity. I mean, the world is diverse. Like the last time I checked, there's every shade of a human is on Earth. So that's diversity. Now, every shade of a human, there's different scientific facts that someone with more pigment in their skin actually handles the sun differently than someone with less pigment. Someone with more pigment in their skin may not handle the cold the same as someone with less. So we have, and that's, I'm just using that as the most general part to go into so we don't go down that rabbit hole. And so in that space, having access to both, to everyone, actually makes a business stronger. I love Nike because we were sponsored by Nike several times in different places in my career. And I love that they really work at being inclusive. As soon as, and you want to see them shift, this is how they shift, and it's how many sports shift. Let someone start winning at something and be different than what they had advertised before. You can go back and chart how athletics shifted their whole platform, how much they are lifting women up now. Like, it's amazing. And I love that they do that. And so then it looks like, to me, in a corporation, is making sure that all parts are represented. And that's all parts of humanity. It's one big team to me. It's team humanity. And I'm looking for that team to win. Team humanity. That means that I don't care if I were working with the Lakers and working with the Warriors. One team loses, it's not really a loss. It's, okay, how can you get better? That's how I see it. And that then means, okay, wait a minute. The Lakers have a female owner. That looks different in the grand scheme of things, of why they can get more females to respond to their product. I mean, I'm using these as really simple examples, but that's why I love diversity. And especially in a business, you want to see a business that thrives. I guarantee you're going to be able to go find one that's gotten closer to being diverse than another. Look at the NFL, one of the most structured businesses, organisms, and look at how much has changed now. They've got women on the field refereeing the men. They've got women in locker rooms. That didn't happen when I was much younger. They've got women in the front office. They've got women presidents and all different things. And now all of a sudden, look what happened. Taylor Swift comes and they make $400 million more dollars. If that doesn't tell someone to get diverse in your delivery and in your makeup of everything, then I think we're missing and not evolving as humanity.
I love that. Yeah. It's, I just laughing about the Taylor Swift comment. Because yeah, that's so true. I'm curious, beyond the diversity that you're seeing as like a positive sign within organizations, what do you think happens when teams are not diverse, when they're not really taking initiative? And how have you seen companies sort of get stuck, or kind of get stuck in their own way by not noticing their lack of diversity?
Well, I think when someone doesn't notice the lack of diversity, they're going to stay in a pattern. And especially right now with, AI, chat GPT, all these different things that are coming that are diverse. Now, they didn't come from one type of person. So now if that's the case, if I'm in a group that only says only this group of people are going to run the company or even run the country, all of a sudden we start getting passed up by other people that are willing to be diverse. And that's how I think it shows up. And the companies that are willing to change with the times, to adapt to what can bring the wins, which looks like you've got to, at this point in time, and we're at a point, to me, as humanity, that we have to use all of our resources, which means everything when it's appropriate. I wouldn't ask a 3-year-old or 5-year-old child to go lift the tractor trailer tire. Well, so but then I might have to ask them if I were looking at something and it was like, okay, how are we going to get that small thing out of that hole? Well, the 5-year-old's hand could probably reach in something smaller than mine. That's diversity. That's using all of our resources to make sure that we get the best in the end.
You spoke a little bit about technology in your example, and I'm curious, how do you see the role of technology influencing leadership and culture within organizations, especially, with AI and all the changes we're inevitably going to see in the next several years?
Well, one that's big to me is I was talking about this, and I didn't realize that now when people are going through the hiring process, they don't even know how to do it. And that blows my mind because I'm so used to recruiting and getting out and talking to people, and I love being interviewed, like for a job. I mean, it's like, okay, I get to sharpen my skills, I get to show who I am and all those different things. And so that baffles me that people are using AI to rate a resume. Now, and that's okay. If you have a job, I know when I interviewed with Joe Novak at Northern Illinois University, he had 11 positions and there were 5,000 resumes per position. So
Wow.
that's a lot of resumes, right? Which I don't even know how he went through all of that. So there is that, narrowing it down. And then at some point we have to get back to being human and actually having a conversation, which I'm not sure that we're right now, as things are moving, with people that used to do that all the time are now moving out of the workforce and into retirement. And so we've got this new wave of people coming in that are so inundated with technology. I think those skills are going to be in high demand again in a different way. It's going to look differently because people don't have to, factory workers aren't the same anymore. Factory workers are computer analysts in many ways and things like that. So I see us evolving. And the big thing is, I feel in humanity, people are going to have to be willing to learn new skills. And someone once told me, if you want to see how the wave of people leave the earth, watch who's willing to adapt with technology and who's not. And when technology shifts, we have to shift. It's like, okay, fork and knife. We no longer need molar teeth. Fork and knife. Now we're sitting at computers all the time. I'm pretty sure that over time, the brain is going to shift in its structure. All those things will continue to evolve, and that will lead us to, all right, what is humanity really going to look like 30 years from now?
Right. And, staying adaptable feels like an important skill set to master as well. And, I'm curious, since you've worked with so many, athletes and executives and leaders, like what are the characteristics of a good leader? I mean, what advice would you give people who are kind of starting out today towards a life of leadership?
I think to lead, the first and foremost for me, I go back and listening is key. And I love the space of, for me, listening twice as much as you speak, listening and letting everybody be heard first, and then coming forward. People, when I sit in these boardrooms, they're often like, wait a minute, you're gonna have everybody speak first? We're here to listen to you. Yeah, but I need to know what you know first. Otherwise I could be telling you how to tie your shoe and you already know how to do that. So
Right.
I want to know what people know. I think that's an important characteristic that has to come for leaders. Another one is that the ability to communicate so that everyone recognizes the importance of their job, whatever that job is, so that everyone can continue to win together. And then relationships. You've got to be able to, as a leader, you've got to be able to relate to everyone, which, it's like, no, I can't sit here and call myself a leader of the world in this way, and then I'm gonna block off this type of person, or I'm going to disregard the people over here. No, everybody has importance. And I think the more that we move forward, the more the leaders of tomorrow have to be able to see the importance of everybody on this ship called Earth.
Mm. I really love that last comment, Sid, because I think there is a tendency for folks to become judgmental towards others who are maybe out of alignment with their values or have differences in opinion. And so, I think that we've become a culture that is so focused on boundaries that we've forgotten to become resilient. So I just want to acknowledge that that comment feels very relevant to today's world.
For sure. Thank you.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit about this concept of being the architect of the art of peaceful living. Where did you come up with that name and what does that mean exactly?
It's funny because no one has ever asked me what that what that means. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, all right, where did this architect thing start for me? And it started when I was going into high school, when I was in junior high, which is middle school to most people now. Uh, and I used to love sketching houses. So I became the architect of all these different. I got the protractor. I got the different things to measure and rulers and everything to draw these houses, and that became my passion, was to create and be an architect. I never went to school for that, yet I learned to be in that space of creation in my life, to be the architect of my own life. The person that truly is saying, all right, this marriage I've had hasn't worked. I created it. How can I be the architect to get to the marriage that I have now in my life? And that's where it starts, is learning how to be the architect of my own life, and then helping others be the architect of their lives. And that's, to me, it all stems from peace. So to be the architect of the art of peaceful living is helping everyone else build that structure for themselves.
It's a beautiful, beautiful analogy. I really love that. It's like the blueprint of, of something is in the architectural lens and frame. So, Sid, when you look back on this journey that you've been on, why do you think that this subject that you spent so much time on, towards leadership and diversity and unconscious bias and helping people connect with themselves, why do you think that this is so important?
Well, I think right now we're at this place where we're at a turning point. We can become numb and allow machinery to move us around and almost be robots of a sort, or clones of ourselves, or we can tap back in and awaken the souls of humanity. I mean, that's where I see it. We either wake up and evolve into something we may not even recognize of ourselves, or we go back to being numb and manipulated through everything. So that's why I think this is such an important place to be, that we start to choose, what are the words that we're speaking? What are the words that we're allowing someone else to speak into our own lives? How are we going to architect a better world for tomorrow?
Amazing. And what sort of things have maybe surprised you the most about human nature or some of the people that you've worked with? What surprised you the most on your journey?
Man, what surprised me the most is, and what surprised me is that it's happened twice in my life. And at 15, when I went to play soccer over in England, I went blind for 3 days. The pollen count got so bad that I woke up with sleep caps over my eyes, and then for 3 days I couldn't see. And it came back. And then recently, it's February, so it's been a year since I got my sight back, where I lost my sight for almost a year. And what was interesting for me was I realized that I created that space from things wasn't aware of. I wasn't aware that I was allergic to sugar. And I was consuming sugar just when I was bored at the computer. Let me go get a drink, because I don't drink alcohol. I don't do much of anything. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna become the connoisseur of root beer. And I'm gonna make root beer my go-to fun thing to do. I'm gonna know everything about root beer. Well, root beer has a lot of sugar. And so I ended up having this reaction again that ultimately took my sight. Now, what I've found on the other side of that is that I wasn't seeing the beauty of the world that the Creator had created. And it was interesting on Valentine's Day, that's when I had one eye cleared out, and I had this patch on my left eye. My right eye I couldn't see. And I called the doctor and said, "Hey, can I just take this patch open so I can scratch my face? I promise you I won't touch my eye. It'll be fine." He said, "Yeah, no problem. Your eyes actually already healed. I just want you to keep the patch on because I like people to be careful. But I didn't know the eye was that resilient. It gets cut, it closes fast. I mean, it's your eye." And so I had the patch off, and I was like, "Oh, wait a minute. I can peek and see if I can see."
Wow.
And I'm not a great. I've had doctors; they've all told me I'm not a good patient. So my wife was sitting to my left. I turned, and when I opened my eye, she was the first thing that I could see.
Wow.
And I realized, wow, my wife is absolutely stunning, and not just her physical beauty, but the aura of my wife, the essence of my wife, everything I think of now that I can see the beauty in the world, what God really created. And so I know I created that space for myself to learn that. That's the biggest surprise of my life, is that I wasn't seeing the world with open eyes.
Wow. Amazing. Oh, that's what a powerful, it's almost like metaphorical that, the eyes are the windows to seeing the world, and like having a break and then coming back online, you saw more clearly. It's just so beautiful. I love that. What about, people that you look up to? Are there any books or resources that you recommend our audience, read or check out that were really great influences on your life?
Well, first, the people I look up to, I mean, or at least I look to. I have my dad mentored this guy, Jerry Guyton, and he's a world-renowned scientist. My dad is a scientist, even though he's retired and all that. And so my dad mentored him, which ultimately, I kind of chuckle because when Jerry wrote the foreword for my next book, he wrote, "These are actually the words from a father to a son." Because my dad mentored him, and he's just passing along the awareness and the wisdom that my dad gave him. So I definitely look up. I don't look up to my dad anymore because I'm actually taller than he is now. but I do honor him because he's just been such a powerful presence in my life, and my mom as well. And without them, I'm not here. So I love them and adore them. And my sister is actually probably one of the biggest rocks in my life, other than my wife, and my grandmother, Morningstar, who put me out on the mountains through Vision Quest 4 times and helped me really hone being the peacemaker that I am being on earth. She helped give me that. That's the biggest gift of my life. And all the coaches, every single one of them, I was blessed to have amazing coaches all the way from 7 years old through college and playing in England and all that. So I've just been blessed to that the Creator put people in my life. And I mean, as I'm sitting here in the pause of that, I just saw so many faces of people that just touched my life. And I think no matter who's listening, pay attention to who's around you. I mean, if you're listening to this, Yasmin seems like an absolutely amazing person. Keep listening.
Oh.
I really feel like that because there's not a lot of people that can sit and listen to somebody else, and I that's why you have one of the most amazing podcasts, because you're in your genius, and that's a beautiful thing. And I'd say, as far as books go, one book for sure is that I really love and use, and I've been reading it almost every day for, since 2007. It's Journey to the Heart by Melody Beattie. I've gone through probably 10 copies because they fall apart. So definitely Journey to the Heart, Melody Beattie. The Autobiography of a Yogi, probably the biggest testimony I can give about that is Steve Jobs, who had access to every book as far as audiobooks and books on his iPad. And the only book he had on there when he passed was The Autobiography of a Yogi. And he gave out over 1,000 copies at his funeral to everybody that attended. My book, The Secret Weapon, actually, it's so profound to me that I actually have started. People keep asking me, Ari, who are you? What do you do? And I'm like, I'm the secret weapon, because it's so many different tools that I have to bring forward. And I wrote the book, so I'm like, may as well use it. And then the last one I'll say is Outliers by Gladwell. And I love that book, and the 10,000 hours and the different ways that we all become outliers of the mainstream of things.
I love that. What an amazing list. That's really cool. And I've heard of Journey to the Heart. That's the only one I think I kind of haven't read or heard of. But I mean, I'm like, did I read that book? It sounds so familiar. I'll have to check it out. An Autobiography of a Yogi is amazing. And I love The Secret Weapon as like a name. I haven't read the book, but I feel like I get a sense of what it would be about after our conversation. Because it's true. I mean, you've lived so many different lives. So you have a lot of tools to pick from that I think a lot of people oftentimes just wouldn't have access to. So Sid, what do you want to tell our listeners about their health and wellness and well-being? What's sort of like your main takeaway or call to action?
First and foremost, if you've never heard it before, everything comes from a thought. And take the time to start to see your thoughts. If there's something in your life that you wish to shift, see the thought that keeps bringing it back. Shift everything inside of yourself. We're all more water than we aren't. And so when I look at someone else, I'm looking at a reflection of me. If I don't like the reflection, when I shift me that's reflecting, the reflection shifts. If I don't like something in the world, I just shift me. Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. It's true because of that. Go look in the lake, you'll see yourself. Look at someone else, you're seeing yourself. If you like it, learn to love yourself.
Wow. Powerful words to end, Sid. Thank you so much. And then are there any resources that you can point folks to in order to learn more about you, your work, where to find you?
Yeah. If you head over to sidmcnairy.com, SIDMCNAIRY.com, that's the easiest place. Then you'll also find artofpeacefulliving.com from there. And you can find Sid McNairy on pretty much all the social media platforms. We just started. I've gone 82 days straight of 1 minute videos to just pour into people so they can have access to things that some people don't have access to. And I want everybody to have it. So I'm going to continue that for 365 days of just 1 minute a day. So if you aren't able to get to a place where we can be together, go there. And I promise that even just these first 82 posts you can on Instagram, you can dive into yourself. And that's what we're all here to do. Learn about ourselves and recognize that we are connected. It's false that we can be disconnected. And so just keep going. Whatever you're doing, keep going, keep raising up. Be willing to rise. Real impact supports everyone. And I could keep going, but I'm going to stop there.
Amazing. Wow. That's really cool that you're doing this 365-day 1-minute video. That's amazing. Sid, thank you so much for your time. It was so wonderful to talk to you. And I can just feel your presence and the impact that you're making on people in this world. And just super grateful that you're here and helping so many of us. So thank you.
Well, I'm going to put this out there because I love making big requests. I am going to be, it took me 30 years to write my autobiography that is coming out this year. So I'm going to be reaching back out to you and getting on my hands and knees and asking if I can come back and talk about it.
Oh, of course. Of course. Anytime. Yeah, absolutely. I'm very much looking forward to reading that. So thank you so much, Sid.
Thank you so much. Yes.
And for our audience, thanks for joining and for listening. In this episode, we learned about how to be a good leader with Sid McNairy. And you can tune in to Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, consciousness, and spirituality. Thanks again. What would you like to see change in your life? And what is the biggest obstacle that you're facing now? I run a 5-week program at the Inner Knowing School for serious individuals who are ready to take the next step in their personal and professional lives. I will personally be coaching a small group of individuals, a number of practical tools and frameworks for creating an intuition practice and for self-mastery. You can find more at theinnerknowingschool.com. I have a master certification in intuition medicine, and I've condensed 10 plus years of experience and research navigating how to harness your energy and intuition in an easy to access live curated course. Now, as someone who's helped countless creatives, entrepreneurs, and many who are just plain stuck, open doors of possibility they never thought existed, I've seen this strategy transform people's inner states and external reality. And the best part is that you'll skyrocket your output and unlock your creative genius. I'll work with you weekly live to overcome your limiting beliefs and show you how to manage your energy instead of your time. I'll teach you how to create clarity, processes, develop your intuition based on some of the top tools and frameworks that I've developed. And you'll get access to guided meditations and visualizations not available anywhere else. This method is so effective that even if you don't have that much time, or if you think that you might not be ready, this will work for you. You can check out the link in the show notes to join the waiting list, and you can check out what past clients had to say about the program. Wishing you all many blessings ahead.